All right, cool. So let's get into it. Let's do a weekly recap for December 1st, the first week of the month. So we're here in my TradeZella dashboard, and I guess to get straight to it, up 1R on the week, and I'll take it. And I'm going to show you something here in a minute that I think is really helpful for tracking what's going on in real time in terms of, like, you can see here I have 3 losses in a row. Why is that? Or 3 red days, let's put it that way, because there are a couple of trades on some of these days. And obviously, if I would have had, green days, this week would have been much, much greener. Kind of like this last trade on Friday ended up offsetting all of my losses on the entire week. So the more we can understand in real time about what's going on with our trades, we can observe patterns potentially and change those patterns sooner than later. So obviously within TradeZella, you can add tags onto a trade. And that's really cool. Like, I love TradeZella. I use it for tracking tons of data. I love all the stuff that it outputs. Like, for example, I can, I track the setup type, the expense reason, whatever it might be, the reason I think that I lost on the trade. And then a whole ton of stuff. Like, I look, would I take the trade again? This one is not filled out. I would say yes there. I look at is it with the daily order flow? Is it with the 4-hour order flow? Is it aligning with the 1-hour order flow? And it gives me all this data to work with when it comes to figuring out what's working and what's not working in my trading. However, one of the things this doesn't do is, like, if I choose an expense reason, there could be more to it than just that. So for me, it's much more helpful to have sometimes a more detailed explanation of what happened on this day, because sometimes it's more than just the expense reason. Like, I have 2 trades on this day. Why am I red? Were both losses? What happened? And this day we'll look at in a second. It's kind of interesting, but I haven't found a better way to do this yet other than just kind of making my own calendar spreadsheet. And it looks like this, and I'll bring it over. So basically, I'll be able to examine the week and look at the themes. So if we look at this first day, I had the 2 trades. I had one was an expense. I got into a trade during consolidation. Okay, cool. And I can look into that further. Like, did the consolidation happen after I got into the trade, or was the consolidation obvious before I got in the trade? In this case, price started consolidating the moment I entered in the trade. So you can't do much about that. Now, however, this is interesting. I had one break-even trade that was actually a win. And what happened is I went to break even at 1R. But I learned something here, and this is part of my new rule set, is within the very first candle of this trade, it went 1.5R. And so my rule says once price reaches 1R, go break even. However, price immediately retraced on the next candle, took me out, and then continued on without me. So I noticed this happened, and I looked back to some other trades, and I kind of was able to reevaluate my break-even rule, which is I can go break even after price has left my entry zone by more than a handful of candles, call it 4 or 5 candles. So with once I enter the trade, if it hits 1R and then comes back within 2 candles, 3 candles to my entry, I'm not touching it. It has to retest and break away, and then I can go break even. So that was a bit of a bummer, because obviously if I would have got this 3R trade, it would have been a green day. In the case of Tuesday, I don't have a trade, right? Yep, no trade. I missed it because I was away from my charts. My rule is I'm supposed to be at my computer until 11, but for whatever reason, I stepped away from my charts and I missed the trade. Now, on Wednesday, I had an expense, and here's where my mistake was. I paid attention to my mentor who had a short bias. I actually had a long bias, and I took a short against my own bias because it's what my mentor was looking for, and I ended up losing that trade. So that was my own fault. And then I noted what would have won. I could have gone long at 11:30. Now, that's another thing to point out. So when I track a day, I write down, did I win, lose, break even? And what's the short reason for it? Is it offsides? Was it a mechanical error? I note those kind of things. In this case, this is just one of my mentors that I follow. I want to compare myself to his performance. Was he green or red on the day, and what did I do? I note what would have won. So cool, like in the case of this day, I didn't have any trades. I missed it. I was away. I would have won if I was at my computer at 11. Now in this case here, what would have won? There were 3 morning trades that would have won, and if I had not gone break even as soon, I would have won. In this case, my rule is like I can't take more than 2 trades, so I couldn't do anything else. In the case of Thursday, so here I had some, what do we have? I had an expense where I was offsides and had a mechanical error. In other words, price did not close above the inversion, and it was so close that I thought it did. I marked it in, and when I looked closer, it was 2 ticks away from closing above that inversion. So there was a bit of a mechanical error. And in that case, that trade was also offsides. So I was against order flow. And then I took a second trade, and this one was acceptable. Like I went break even at 1R, and price came back against me. And this is why I go break even at 1R. I want to see it retest and run away some, but if it runs away and then comes back to my entry, I'm probably offside. So in this case, price wanted to go 1 level deeper before the reversal. So, and I note here, what would have won is a possible 11-10 long, and that's where it went to this next level deeper, and taking this 11-10 long on Thursday would have won. Now also note any other notes, like cool, this was an S&D sort of PA, and I want to note these kind of things where sometimes you'll see patterns where it's like, oh, seek and destroy, and you had it 3 times this week. In this case, I didn't have any other notes other than 1 day of seek and destroy, but it's helpful. And then of course, Wednesday was a green day. So when I look at this, the theme, I want to see the theme, like was price consolidating on the 1 hour and I constantly got whipped out of trades, right? You can start, if that happens multiple days, you can start to see these themes. In this case, this week, it was just a mix of different issues. So there's nothing to me that's calling out a pattern that I need to fix. In this case, the mistakes were offsides by listening to my mentor's bias. I had a minor mechanical mistake with my break-even criteria, and not being in front of the charts until 12 like I'm supposed to. So those are 3 different mistakes. Obviously, mistakes I might repeat over a longer period of time, but I'm not making repetitive mistakes during this week. Now, that's not true for other weeks sometimes. Sometimes, and I don't have any on this current spreadsheet. Maybe I do. I don't want to confuse it by going into other spreadsheets, but ultimately, this allows me to see patterns of my mistakes so I can correct them. So that's kind of a review for the week. Let's go back here to TradeZella. So I'll take positive 1R on the week. I think heading into next week, I'm hoping for a little better performance than this. I've been off of my game the last few weeks. I don't know what it is. I even heard one of my mentor talking about it. He was saying the last couple months for him have also been a little less than his typical performance. He's been green on the last couple months, but he's not nearly as green as he usually is. So yeah, that's my wrap on this week. Going into next week, I think I might try, well, we can look up the economic calendar for next week real quick. So we have FOMC next week. So I was going to say I might push up my risk a little bit next week, but given that it's FOMC, I'm not going to push up risk. I'm going to keep it at 140, 150. I need to get it to about the 250 mark on this account to be in alignment with the size I should be trading. But like I said, I've not been trading the best the last few weeks, so I've brought my risk down a little bit, and I'm going to keep it there for the next week or two. And then also going into December, I know December can be a lower volume month. However, in my experience for last December I did really well. So I'm hoping, I'm kind of keeping my eye on it. This week felt a little dicey, I'm not going to lie. Felt like I couldn't quite get it right. But that's just how it goes sometimes, and that's a part of, trading is some weeks we're not going to get it all right. So yeah, that's a recap of the week, and I'll catch you live trading.